The death zone was not a place for life. Dark storms rolled across broken land, lightning clawing down from a sky that seemed more like ash than air. The ground was jagged, split open with deep cracks that glowed faint red, like wounds that would never heal. Sharp winds screamed through the valley, carrying the smell of poison. The bones of other challengers lay scattered in the dust. No one who entered the death zone ever came back whole, and yet the humans stood at the edge. Alien eyes watched them from tall, floating towers. Species from across the stars had gathered, their glowing eyes cold and certain. They had seen many trials before. The death zone was the ultimate test, one designed to prove worthiness. The strongest warriors of countless worlds had tried, but most had died. Those who lived did so alone, leaving behind the weak. This was the way of strength. But the humans were different. There were 20 of them, lined up in the stormlight. They wore battered armor, nothing special, only what they had carried with them from Earth. They had no great weapons, no advanced shields. Their power was not in their tools, it was in their will. At the front stood Captain Elias, broad-shouldered, his jaw set like stone. His eyes scanned the wasteland ahead. Behind him were men and women of all shapes, sizes, and ages. Some were scarred soldiers. Others were young, barely more than civilians. One woman leaned on a crutch. Another man limped with a brace strapped to his knee. The alien spectators laughed at the sight. "This is their team? They bring the weak into the death zone?" sneered a voice over the intercom, the words echoing in many tongues. "They will be the first to die." But Elias did not turn. He spoke quietly to his people and his voice was calm. "This is our trial," he said. "No one walks alone. No one is left behind. If we cross together." The group nodded, some with fear, others with fire. They knew the danger. They knew the odds, but they stepped forward anyway. The first steps into the death zone were like walking into a furnace. Heat pressed against their skin, even through their armor. Dust whipped their faces, stinging their eyes. The ground shook with a low, steady rumble, as though the planet itself wished to break them. Behind them, the alien judges leaned back in their chairs, amused. "Watch closely," said one, his voice smooth and certain. "They will abandon their weak soon enough. It is the only way forward." But the humans moved in a tight formation, shields up, keeping the limping and the wounded in the middle. Every time a blast of wind tried to knock someone down, strong hands caught them. Every time a stumble came, someone lifted them back up. Hours passed. The zone gave no mercy. Acid rain began to fall, burning holes in their cloaks. One young man, not more than 20, cried out as the acid seared his arm. He fell to his knees, pain tearing through him. The aliens leaned forward, waiting for the others to leave him behind. Instead, Elias and 2 others pulled him to his feet, wrapping his arm, shielding him from the storm. They slowed their pace, moving as one. The alien towers went quiet. The death zone was meant to break the weak away from the strong. But these humans refused to split. Every step was harder. Every breath was pain. But no one was left behind. And for the first time in centuries, the death zone saw something new. Not just survival, but unity. The storm raged louder. The night would soon fall, and with it greater dangers. But the humans did not look back. Not once. Their trial had begun. The death zone did not wait for the humans to grow used to its cruelty. As the group pushed deeper, the ground shifted under their boots. Cracks opened suddenly, coughing out steam hot enough to blister skin. The air grew heavier, filled with the smell of burning stone and something worse, something alive. From the shadows of broken cliffs, eyes glowed. Dozens of them. The humans stopped. They heard the growls first, low and sharp, like knives scraping against rock. Then the shapes came forward. Creatures thin as bone but long-limbed, their skin gray and stretched tight, their jaws unhinged, lined with teeth like glass. They had been waiting. "Keep formation," Captain Elias said, his voice steady. The humans tightened their ranks. Shields rose, weapons pointed forward. The weak were kept inside, guarded on all sides. The creatures attacked. They came in waves, screeching, climbing across the jagged rocks like spiders. The first one leapt, claws flashing. It slammed against Elias's shield. He shoved it back and drove his blade through its chest. The creature screeched once, then fell silent. But more came. The line shook under the weight. Shields rang with impacts, claws screeched across steel. A young woman stumbled as one of the beasts tore her shield aside. Its teeth flashed. Then Sergeant Rhea, tall and broad as a wall, caught the beast by its throat and snapped it backward with one arm. She dragged the woman back to her feet. "Stay close," Rhea barked. "Don't you dare fall now." The battle was chaos, but it was not hopeless. Every time one human fell, others rushed to cover. When a man tripped, 3 pulled him up. When a woman's weapon snapped, another handed her theirs. The group moved like a single body, many limbs but one spirit. The aliens watching from their towers leaned closer. Their voices filled the air, broadcast across the storm. "Fools," one spat. "They waste their strength. They protect the weak, and so they will all fall." Another voice laughed. "See how they slow each other down? When one stumbles, 5 suffer. This is not strength. This is weakness multiplied." But the humans did not listen. The creatures broke upon them again and again, but the line held. Elias shouted orders, his voice carrying above the screams. Rhea and the other strong fighters took the brunt of the attacks, their shields dented and their arms bleeding. Minutes stretched into an hour. Finally, the beasts began to retreat, hissing into the cracks and shadows. They had lost too many, and the humans still stood. Breathing heavy, the group gathered together. "We hold here," Elias said. They found a small hollow in the rocks, a place to rest for the night. It was barely shelter, but it was enough to shield them from the worst of the wind. As they worked, one of the weaker men collapsed to the ground, his knee brace twisted and broken. He groaned in pain. "Leave him," one alien voice thundered from the tower, echoing across the zone. "Leave him and move faster if you value your lives." The humans froze for a moment. The words echoed, tempting them. Survival would be easier if they moved without him. The death zone was far from over, and they all knew it. But Elias crouched by the man, fixing the brace with rough hands. "We carry him," Elias said, not looking back at the tower. Rhea lifted the man with ease, setting him across her shoulders. The group adjusted, ready to move slower if needed. No one argued. From the tower's silence, the night came fast. The temperature dropped, sharp and brutal. The air that had burned their lungs in the day now froze in their throats. Their breath rose in clouds. Fingers numbed, teeth chattered. The wounded shook with fever. The death zone did not kill only with beasts. It killed with time, with cold, with silence. The humans huddled together in the hollow, wrapping what cloth and cloaks they had. Strong arms pulled the weak closer, sharing body heat. They whispered stories, simple tales of Earth, of green forests, warm oceans, families waiting far away. Even in the cold, some laughed. The aliens watched in confusion. No other species had done this. Strength for them meant standing alone. Strength meant leaving the weak behind. But these humans wasted energy on songs, on stories, on carrying each other, and still, they survived. When dawn broke, the group rose again. Their bodies ached, their eyes were hollow, but not one was left behind. The death zone roared ahead, cruel and endless. But the humans moved forward, step by step, carrying the weak with them. And above, the alien voices no longer laughed. They whispered instead, uneasy as if a truth was beginning to slip through their fingers, a truth they did not want to believe. The death zone gave no peace. By the second night, the humans were already worn down. Their armor was dented, their cloaks torn by claws and storms. Cuts and bruises marked their bodies, and hunger gnawed at their stomachs. But none of them turned back. The air grew colder as the sun dropped, far colder than the night before. The sky turned black, covered with storm clouds that swallowed every star. The wind came in hard, screaming through the cracks like a living thing. Ice dust fell in sheets, sharp as blades. The group found shelter in a broken ridge, half collapsed but deep enough to keep the storm from ripping them apart. They huddled close, the wounded in the center, the strongest on the outside to block the wind. It was not enough. Frost formed across their armor. Their hands stiffened. Their lips turned blue. Some began to shake uncontrollably. The death zone was not just a place of monsters. It was a place designed to crush spirit as much as flesh. Sergeant Rhea clenched her jaw as she sat against the wall of stone, arms spread wide to shield 2 younger ones beside her. Her shoulders shook, but she would not let them see her weakness. Captain Elias moved through the group, checking each person. His breath came in white clouds. His face was pale, but his eyes stayed hard. "Stay awake," he said. "Talk to each other. Don't let the cold take you." At first there was silence. No one wanted to waste the little strength they had left. But then a voice rose, weak but steady. "I once lived near the sea," said an older woman, her voice shaking. The air was warm there, always smelling of salt. Waves would crash against the rocks and children would run along the sand. My grandchildren would laugh as they built castles, though the tide always took them away. The words painted a picture in their minds, of blue water, of golden shores, of warmth. Another voice joined in. "I remember the forests of home. Trees taller than towers, their leaves so thick the sunlight turned green when it came through. I'd lie on the moss and listen to the wind through the branches." Someone chuckled softly. "That beats the stink of this place." Bit by bit, the hollow filled with voices. They told stories of home, families, fields, cities glowing with light. They spoke of music, of food, of moments that made them laugh. They spoke of earth. The weak leaned against the strong. The strong wrapped their arms around the weak. Together their voices pushed back against the silence of the death zone. The aliens in the towers listened, unsettled. "They waste their energy on words," one said, his voice sharp. "They weaken themselves further." But another did not answer. His many eyes blinked slowly, watching the way the humans leaned on each other, how even in suffering they seemed to grow stronger together. The night dragged on. The storm howled, but the humans did not break. At dawn the storm eased. Frost covered the rocks in glittering sheets. The humans stood, stiff and aching but alive. Not one had been lost. They pressed forward. The death zone grew worse. Sharp ridges rose like jagged teeth, forcing them to climb. Their boots slipped on ice. Their hands bled as they gripped broken stone. And still the weakest were not left behind. Rhea and the other strong pulled them up, lifted them across gaps, carried them when they fell. Every step was pain. Every climb was risk. But they moved. At one point, a young man collapsed halfway up a frozen slope. His hands could no longer hold. He slid down, tumbling against the rock. Before he could fall into the abyss below, Elias threw himself forward. He caught the young man's arm, grunting as the weight nearly pulled them both over. "Hold," Elias shouted, teeth clenched. Others rushed to anchor them, forming a chain of hands and ropes until the young man was pulled back to safety. His face was pale, his body weak. "I can't," he whispered. "I'll only slow you down." But Rhea knelt beside him, her voice like steel. "Then we carry you. You will not be left." The group lifted him, binding him with straps and ropes so he could be hauled across the worst climbs. He wept quietly, ashamed, but no one mocked him. The aliens watching argued louder now. "This is madness," one hissed. "They are dragging weight that should be cut loose. They choose weakness over survival." But another alien, older and slower to speak, leaned forward. His voice was thoughtful. "Or perhaps this is their survival. Alone, they would have fallen. Together they climb." The others scoffed, but their eyes never left the humans. By the time the sun set again, the humans had crossed the ridges. Their bodies were nearly broken, but their eyes still burned with stubborn fire. They gathered wood scraps and broken shards of old weapons left behind by past challengers, building a small fire in a hollow cave. The flames were weak, but they were enough. The humans sat close, their shadows long against the stone walls. They sang softly this time, voices low but steady. It was not a song of victory. It was a song of endurance, of defiance, a song to remind themselves they were alive. And as the sound carried through the cold, even the death zone seemed to pause and listen. The death zone was not only storms and monsters. It was also a test of the mind. By the fourth day, the humans were weak with hunger. Their rations had run low. The air was thin and sharp. Each breath felt like swallowing glass. Blisters covered their feet. Some could barely walk, but still they carried the weak. Still they moved forward. That was when the voices came. From above, hidden in the storm clouds, the alien towers crackled with energy. A smooth, cold voice rolled across the broken land. "Humans," it said, "hear this. You carry the weak, and for this you suffer. You bleed. You crawl when you could run." The humans stopped, listening. Their boots sank into dust. "Leave them behind," the voice whispered. "Leave the broken, leave the useless. The strong among you will pass quickly. The weak will die no matter what you do. Why chain yourselves to them? Why doom yourselves for pity?" The words slithered into their minds. Some of the humans looked down at the wounded they carried. The young man with the injured arm, the older woman with the crutch. the one strapped to Ria's back, pale and barely conscious. Their weight slowed the group. Their weakness made every step harder. The voice pressed harder. You know it is true. Alone you could survive. Together you will all die. Choose. Abandon them and the path will open. Keep them, and you will never leave this place alive. The wind fell quiet. Even the death zone seemed to wait for their answer. For a long moment no one spoke. Faces were tight with exhaustion. Their eyes were hollow with pain. Doubt clawed at them. Then Elias stepped forward. He looked up at the storm, his voice hard. We are human, he said. We do not abandon our own. If we fall together. If we rise together. His words cut through the silence. Ria grinned through cracked lips. You hear that? She shouted to the sky. We carry the weak. That is our strength. The group roared in agreement, voices hoarse but full of fire. The weak lifted their heads, their eyes wet with tears. Above, the alien voices hissed. Fools, madness, they will die here. But others in the towers did not answer. Their gazes lingered, thoughtful. The trial pressed on. The humans marched forward past broken machines and shattered bones from those who had failed before. Their path led them into a canyon, its walls jagged and sharp, its floor covered in ash. They did not know the aliens had planned another trap. The canyon narrowed until only one could pass at a time. In the shadows, strange lights flickered, glowing like eyes. And then from the cracks in the stone, gas began to hiss. It was not poison. It was worse, the gas clouded the mind. It filled their heads with voices. Not the alien towers this time, but whispers that sounded like their own thoughts. Why are we carrying them? One thought pushed into a woman's head. They're slowing us. I could be free of this. You'll die here because of them. Another whisper said in a man's mind. Drop them. Walk away. One soldier stopped. His eyes were blank. His hands shook. He looked at the weak man beside him as though seeing him for the first time. Not as a comrade, but as a burden. Elias saw it. He grabbed the soldier's shoulders, shaking him hard. Look at me, he barked. These voices are lies. Remember who you are. The soldier blinked, the fog clearing from his eyes. He gasped and nodded. Ria snarled at the canyon walls. You'll not break us with tricks, she shouted, lifting her weapon high. We are not like you. The group pressed closer together, hands gripping shoulders, pulling each other forward through the gas. They whispered words of strength to each other. Stay with us. You are not alone. We walk together. Step by step, they fought through the whispers. At last, they emerged from the canyon, coughing, their minds heavy but unbroken. They collapsed on the open ground, breathing hard, but not one had been lost. From the towers, silence. The aliens had seen many challengers fall in that canyon. Most tore each other apart before they ever left it. But these humans had endured. The old alien with many eyes finally spoke, his voice calm. They're different, he said. They are dangerous, not because they are the strongest, but because they refuse to be divided. His words unsettled the others. They hissed in anger, but none could deny what they had seen. The humans rose again, battered but alive. Their unity was stronger than before. The death zone had thrown monsters, storms, and lies at them. And still they carried the weak. Still they never looked back. The death zone stretched ahead like a wound in the world. The canyon ended, but what lay beyond was worse. The land was split apart by deep chasms glowing with molten fire. Rivers of lava cut through the black stone, bubbling and spitting sparks into the air. The heat pressed down like a weight, stealing every breath. The path forward was broken. Bridges of rock that crumbled under the faintest step. Ledges so narrow a slip would mean falling into the fire below. The humans stood at the edge, sweat running down their faces despite the burning air. They were tired, bleeding, weak, but they did not turn back. We move together, Captain Elias said. His voice was rough but steady. One at a time across the narrow ledges. The strong go first, then we pull the others. The group nodded. Their eyes were heavy, but their hands were firm. The first crossing began. Ria went forward, carrying the man strapped to her back. Her boots slid on the narrow rock, sparks of molten stone spraying below her feet. She gritted her teeth and pressed forward. Every step was slow, deliberate. When she reached the other side, she turned and shouted, "Rope! Send the rope!" The humans worked quickly, fastening a rope between the ledge and the far side. With it, they pulled the weak across one by one, while others balanced carefully on the path. It was slow, dangerous work. Halfway across, disaster struck. The rock beneath one young woman gave way with a crack. She screamed as the ledge crumbled, her body tumbling toward the glowing river below. Without hesitation, Elias dove forward. His hand shot out, catching her wrist just as she slipped over the edge. The weight dragged at him, pulling his chest across the sharp rock. Lava hissed and spat below. "Pull!" Elias roared. The others grabbed him, forming a chain. Their muscles strained, their teeth clenched. Inch by inch, they dragged the young woman back to safety. She collapsed into the group, trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "No," Elias said firmly. "You are with us. That is enough." The group pressed on. Every crossing was a battle. The heat blistered their skin. The rocks shifted and cracked. Twice more people slipped, and twice more they were dragged back from the edge. Each rescue cost them strength they could not spare, but they never faltered. Above, the aliens watched in disbelief. "Why?" one hissed. "Why risk death for the weak? They lose time, they lose strength. They should cut the rope and save themselves." "They should," another agreed. "But they do not." The old alien with many eyes leaned forward. "Because to them, leaving one behind is worse than death." The others fell silent at his words. The path narrowed further. A stone bridge stretched across a wide river of fire, its surface cracked and unstable. One by one, the humans stepped across, the stone groaning under their weight. The last to cross was Rhea, still carrying the man on her back. The bridge cracked loudly beneath her. She froze. Chunks of rock fell into the lava below. The man stirred weakly, realizing what was happening. "Put me down," he whispered. "If you keep me, the bridge will take us both." Rhea shook her head, her jaw tight. "Not happening." The bridge cracked again, wider this time. Elias shouted from the far side, "Run!" Rhea sprinted forward, every step shaking the bridge. The stone split behind her, collapsing into the fire. With a final leap, she cleared the edge and crashed onto the solid ground, rolling hard. The man clung to her, both of them alive. The group cheered weakly, relief flooding their faces. But the path did not end there. The broken land stretched on, gap after gap, bridge after bridge. They pushed forward until their bodies could take no more, then stopped in a hollow of black stone to rest. Their hands were burned. Their legs trembled. Their throats were dry as dust, yet not one of them had fallen. That night they built no fire. The heat of the molten rivers was enough. They sat together, silent, listening to the endless rumble of the earth. One of the younger ones finally spoke. "Why do we keep surviving when no one else has?" Elias looked at them all. His eyes were shadowed, but his voice was steady. "Because we are not alone. That is our strength." Above, the aliens in their towers whispered among themselves. They had seen warriors cross the broken path before, but never with so many, never without leaving the weak behind. The death zone was built to divide, to make the strong abandon the weak, but these humans refused. They carried each other again and again, no matter the cost. And for the first time, the aliens began to wonder if perhaps they had misunderstood what true strength meant. The broken path was behind them. But ahead, storms gathered, dark and endless. The greatest trial was still to come. The humans rose the next morning, their bodies battered but their spirit unbroken, and together, they stepped forward once more. The death zone had saved its worst for the end. The humans climbed a rise of black stone and saw the final stretch. Before them stretched a wasteland of storms, vast and endless. The sky above was a whirl of black clouds torn by constant lightning. Winds howled so loud they drowned out thought. Acid rain poured in sheets, hissing as it struck the rock. The ground was broken and slick, split with deep pits that swallowed the light. No living thing had ever crossed this storm. The aliens in the towers spoke with grim certainty. "This is where they fall," one said. "No species has survived the final trial. They will break here." But the humans only looked at one another. Their faces were pale, their armor broken, their bodies close to collapse, yet their eyes held the same fire as before. Elias raised his voice, cutting through the roar of the wind. "This is it. One last push. No matter what happens, we do it together." Rhea lifted the man on her back higher. He was barely conscious now, his lips moving weakly. Still, she nodded. "We carry them. All of them. To the end." And so they stepped into the storm. The wind hit like a hammer, knocking them sideways. They linked arms, gripping tight, forming a chain. Every step was a battle. The rain seared their skin, burning holes in their cloaks. Their boots slipped on the slick stone, sending sparks as they scrambled for balance. Lightning crashed down, striking the ground in blinding flashes. The air shook with thunder. One of the younger women stumbled, her leg giving out. She would have been swept away by the storm, but two others grabbed her, dragging her back into the chain. They screamed into her ear, though the wind stole most of their words. "Stay with us. Stay awake." Step by step they pressed forward. The storm grew worse. Walls of wind rose around them, swirling with dust and fire. The path split into jagged ridges. On one side was a pit of boiling mud. On the other, cliffs that crumbled under their touch. The group hesitated, shielding their eyes from the burning rain. "There is no path," one of them shouted. "There is always a path," Elias answered. He looked at the weakest among them, then at Rhea. "We carry them." So they did. The strong lifted the weak into their arms, carrying them across the ridges. When the cliffs collapsed, they pulled each other up with ropes and bleeding hands. When the mud pit spat steam, they shielded the small and the fragile with their own bodies. Each time they were struck down, they rose again. One man fell to his knees, coughing blood, unable to stand. Rhea pulled him onto her shoulder without hesitation. Another fainted in the burning rain. Elias himself carried her, staggering but refusing to drop her. The aliens above watched in stunned silence. They had seen strength before. They had seen endurance. But this was something else. This was defiance. This was unity. The storm roared louder, as if enraged. The ground split open ahead, a gap too wide to cross. Lava churned at the bottom, spitting fire into the air. The humans gathered at the edge, their faces grim. They had no bridges left, no ropes long enough to span the gap. For a moment, silence fell. Then Elias stepped forward. He tied the last of their ropes around his waist. "I go first," he said. "No," Rhea growled. "It's suicide." Elias gave her a faint smile. So was this whole trial. He looked at them all. "If I fall, you carry on. But if I make it, you follow." Before anyone could stop him, he leapt. The wind caught him, dragging him sideways, but he slammed against the far side of the gap. His hands caught the edge. For a terrible moment, he hung there, slipping. Then with a roar, he pulled himself up. He turned, planting the rope, his chest heaving. "Now!" he shouted. One by one, the humans crossed, clinging to the rope, fighting the wind. Twice they nearly fell, but hands caught them, pulling them forward. Finally, Rhea came last, carrying two at once. She stumbled, nearly dragged into the fire. But the others pulled her up with all their strength. When the last of them collapsed onto the far side, the gap roared shut behind them. The storm howled louder, striking them with rain and lightning. But they were close now. The edge of the death zone was in sight. A faint glow of clear sky broke through the black clouds ahead. Their bodies were broken. Their minds were fraying. But they did not stop. They carried the weak. They carried the wounded. And even the weak, even the dying, lifted their heads and pressed on. Every step was agony. Every breath was fire. But they moved, together. Above, the aliens were silent. They had no words left. And when the humans finally broke through the storm, collapsing onto solid ground beyond the death zone, not one of them was missing. They had crossed. The final trial was done. The death zone had saved its worst for the end. The humans climbed a rise of black stone and saw the final stretch. Before them stretched a wasteland of storms, vast and endless. The sky above was a whirl of black clouds torn by constant lightning. Winds howled so loud they drowned out thought. Acid rain poured in sheets, hissing as it struck the rock. The ground was broken and slick, split with deep pits that swallowed the light. No living thing had ever crossed this storm. The aliens in the towers spoke with grim certainty. "This is where they fall," one said. "No species has survived the final trial. They will break here." But the humans only looked at one another. Their faces were pale, their armor broken, their bodies close to collapse. Yet their eyes held the same fire as before. Elias raised his voice, cutting through the roar of the wind. "This is it. One last push. No matter what happens, we do it together." Rhea lifted the man on her back higher. He was barely conscious now, his lips moving weakly. Still, she nodded. "We carry them. All of them. To the end." And so they stepped into the storm. The wind hit like a hammer, knocking them sideways. They linked arms, gripping tight, forming a chain. Every step was a battle. The rain seared their skin, burning holes in their cloaks. Their boots slipped on the slick stone, sending sparks as they scrambled for balance. Lightning crashed down, striking the ground in blinding flashes. The air shook with thunder. One of the younger women stumbled, her leg giving out. She would have been swept away by the storm, but two others grabbed her, dragging her back into the chain. They screamed into her ear, though the wind stole most of their words. "Stay with us. Stay awake!" Step by step, they pressed forward. The storm grew worse. Walls of wind rose around them, swirling with dust and fire. The path split into jagged ridges. On one side was a pit of boiling mud. On the other, cliffs that crumbled under their touch. The group hesitated, shielding their eyes from the burning rain. "There is no path." One of them shouted. "There is always a path," Elias answered. He looked at the weakest among them, then at Rhea. "We carry them." So they did. The strong lifted the weak into their arms, carrying them across the ridges. When the cliffs collapsed, they pulled each other up with ropes and bleeding hands. When the mud pits spat steam, they shielded the small and the fragile with their own bodies. Each time they were struck down, they rose again. One man fell to his knees, coughing blood, unable to stand. Rhea pulled him onto her shoulder without hesitation. Another fainted in the burning rain. Elias himself carried her, staggering but refusing to drop her. The aliens above watched in stunned silence. They had seen strength before. They had seen endurance. But this was something else. This was defiance. This was unity. The storm roared louder, as if enraged. The ground split open ahead, a gap too wide to cross. Lava churned at the bottom, spitting fire into the air. The humans gathered at the edge, their faces grim. They had no bridges left, no ropes long enough to span the gap. For a moment, silence fell. Then Elias stepped forward. He tied the last of their ropes around his waist. "I go first," he said. "No," Rhea growled. "It's suicide." Elias gave her a faint smile. "So was this whole trial." He looked at them all. "If I fall, you carry on. But if I make it, you follow." Before anyone could stop him, he leapt. The wind caught him, dragging him sideways, but he slammed against the far side of the gap. His hands caught the edge. For a terrible moment, he hung there, slipping. Then with a roar, he pulled himself up. He turned, planting the rope, his chest heaving. "Now!" he shouted. One by one, the humans crossed, clinging to the rope, fighting the wind. Twice they nearly fell, but hands caught them, pulling them forward. Finally, Rhea came last, carrying two at once. She stumbled, nearly dragged into the fire. But the others pulled her up with all their strength. When the last of them collapsed onto the far side, the gap roared shut behind them. The storm howled louder, striking them with rain and lightning, but they were close now. The edge of the death zone was in sight. A faint glow of clear sky broke through the black clouds ahead. Their bodies were broken. Their minds were fraying. But they did not stop. They carried the weak. They carried the wounded, and even the weak, even the dying, lifted their heads and pressed on. Every step was agony. Every breath was fire. But they moved, together. Above, the aliens were silent. They had no words left. And when the humans finally broke through the storm, collapsing onto solid ground beyond the death zone, not one of them was missing. They had crossed. The final trial was done.